Hello and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. We're continuing on in Exodus chapter 7 this week, and I'm going to begin by reading verses 3 through 5 from my translation. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, so I can multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. Pharaoh will not listen to you, but I will set my hand over Egypt, and I will bring out my battalions, my people, the Israelites, from the land of Egypt, with great judgments. So the Egyptians will know that I am Yahweh, when I stretch out my hand over Egypt and bring out the Israelites from their midst. We have so much to talk about here that it's going to take us more than 1 week. We especially want to spend some time on this question of the hardening of Pharaoh's heart, because a lot of people struggle to understand this. But first, before we get to the hardening of Pharaoh's heart, it's worth noticing that God does not announce that he's going to bring plagues on Egypt. He announces that he's going to do signs and wonders. Now, we're used to referring to these as the 10 plagues, but the more that I have studied these narratives, the more I have become convinced that there are not just 10. As I count it, there are 12. And since the Bible does not call them plagues, I don't think we should either. Sometimes I still do by accident because it's been such a long-term habit. But I'm going to try to be calling them the signs and wonders, because I think what that helps us to focus on is the purpose. The purpose is not to cause harm. The purpose is to demonstrate Yahweh's identity. It says the purpose for the hardening is so that God can do signs and wonders. And then the purpose of the signs and wonders is to show who he is. So Pharaoh's not going to listen. But when God brings the people out of Egypt, it's going to be a form of judgment on Pharaoh and on his people for their refusal to listen and comply with Yahweh's demands. And the end result in verse 5 is that the Egyptians will know that he is Yahweh. They're not just going to know, okay, there's the God and he goes by the name Yahweh, and alongside of all of our other gods that we worship, okay, here's another one to add to the pantheon. No, they're going to know something about this Yahweh. They're going to know that Yahweh has superior power and authority to all the gods they've known. They're going to see blow by blow as he performs these signs and wonders that he is more powerful than Pharaoh, that he's more powerful than the gods of Egypt. And then it will ultimately result in the freedom of the people of Israel. Now, the reason that the hardening of Pharaoh's heart is connected here with the signs and wonders is because it's only because of Pharaoh's stubbornness that Yahweh will have the opportunity to demonstrate his superiority to Pharaoh and his gods. It provides the occasion for that display of Yahweh's strength. The thing I think people struggle with the most with the hardening of Pharaoh's heart is that here's how it seems. It seems like God says, I'm going to harden your heart, and then because you have a hard heart, I'm going to judge you. And that seems really unfair. So if Pharaoh has no choice in the matter, how can God judge him for it? I think there are 3 different dimensions of this question that need to be re-examined in order for us to get a fully satisfying answer. The first dimension for us to think about is the complexity of the Hebrew words used. So we're going to talk about that today. Next week, we're going to talk about the Egyptian context, and that will help us understand the terms that are used in Hebrew. And finally, we'll look at the literary patterning by which these terms are introduced. So the first thing to know is that there are 3 different words used to describe the, quote, hardening of Pharaoh's heart. But all 3 of them tend to be translated into English as hardening, which obscures their subtle differences, and it also obscures the literary patterning that introduces them. So the 3 Hebrew words that we need to be aware of are first kasheh, which means hard or firm, and then chazak, which means strong or resolute, and then finally kaved, which means heavy. And I've gone carefully through all of these narratives of signs and wonders to identify when is each of these words being used and who is doing that thing to Pharaoh's heart. So all three are used to describe Pharaoh's heart. Sometimes God is doing the acting, sometimes Pharaoh is doing the acting, and sometimes it's described as a state, like his heart was strong or his heart was heavy, and it doesn't indicate who made it that way. And I think what emerges as we pay attention to this is that Yahweh and Pharaoh are not doing the same thing to Pharaoh's heart. What Yahweh is typically doing is making Pharaoh's heart strong. He's encouraging him, he's strengthening him so that he can carry out what he has already freely decided to do. In contrast to that, what Pharaoh is usually doing to his own heart is making it heavy, which is a different idiom in Hebrew. So in English, we talk about a heavy heart as meaning sad or discouraged, but that's not what it means in Hebrew or in an Egyptian context. Now, the idea of having a firm heart relates, I think, with how we would use the word, like the idea of a firm heart means you're determined to do something, you're resolute, and that translates pretty well. So having a strong heart is being resolute. Having a hard heart in English seems to give the connotation of being cruel, but that's not how it works in Hebrew. Having a hard heart just communicates that same sense of resoluteness, that someone has determined to do something and they're going to see it through to the end. So the first thing to know is that there are three different words and that they're being used in different contexts and that there's different subjects for each of them. Next week, when we come back together again, I will show you how these words bear out in the literary patterning of the book and how the Egyptian context can help us understand what's really happening. But for now, have a great week.